Triambakam yajamahe sugantim pushtivardhanam urvarukamiva bandhanam mrityurmukshyamamritat.
Hi, this is Amalia Eon Karis.
Hey everyone, it's Satya, and you're listening to Love, Sex, and the Hidden Agenda.
Hello, this is Joe Roop, the producer of Love, Sex, and the Hidden Agenda. What I wanted to ask both of you about the gurus that are in, the leaders of these mystery schools. It seems to me like there's something going on there, especially with this whole John of God story going on. If people aren't familiar with that, he was a spiritual leader from Brazil, a faith healer, actually was on Oprah. Millions of people loved and followed this guy, and now he's on trial for sexual abuse and rape, and 300 women have come forth about it, and they're going to have a trial. So I'm just, from, I guess, Amalia's experience first, is this stuff really going on, and how much is it going on?
Oh, yeah. I'm so glad you're bringing this topic here, because what I've known my whole life from growing up inside of a born-again Christian cult is the misuse of spiritual leaders with their sexuality is rampant. I have personally experienced it since childhood, and pretty much in every spiritual organization that I've been a part of, I have seen it firsthand going on, and it's been a huge issue for me. It's what drove me to pretty much bring this podcast forth and to kind of teach and bring the mystery school that I have, which is a big part of it. And the primary core essence of my teachings is all about coming into right relationship with yourself and redesigning your own inner navigation system so that you aren't under the control or manipulation of others, because so many spiritual leaders are misusing their power, I think, more than not. So, I mean, look at the Vatican and all the Catholic Church. I mean, we're constantly hearing about another bishop and priest here that has been molesting children. And there's a huge underground sort of backstage network of this. It's an epidemic, really. And I think it's why so many people have left the church or fallen away from their faith-based practices, because they see that their spiritual leader isn't what they thought he or she was. And yeah, there's a lot I can say on it, but I'm just going to pause for a second because it's a huge topic. You want to say something, Satya?
Well, just, it's not surprising, because oftentimes, sociopaths, psychopaths, they are, narcissists, they are drawn to spirituality. They are drawn to religion. They're often, the leaders of churches. They're often the leaders of spiritual movements, and they're often very charismatic, and everyone, it just flocks to them like bees to honey, or just they just. It's not surprising from that angle. It's saddening, because we, again, our spirituality, our that glowing light within, that's within us, and we all need our divine spark. And when we're looking elsewhere, or when we get swept up in certain religions and things, it's just, the misuse of power.
Can I tell you what worries me about it the most? I think
Mhm.
not the fact that there are victims, because that's awful, right? But like your book, the book you wrote is a fantastic book, Amalia. But as soon as somebody, let's say somebody finds out that, okay, these teachings, some of these people, these gurus that taught this stuff, that teach this stuff, they're sexual predators and you shouldn't mess with it. And that's what I'm afraid of, because like the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater because of the leaders of the teachings of these things, you know?
Absolutely. And that happens. And I think that's part of the hidden agenda behind it, because two things are going on. And I'm going to talk, I have a lot of personal experience with this, and so we can go into some of those stories or how I came to know some of this. But when we come into our spiritual power, so anyone who is a spiritual leader or is a teacher of spiritual science or the mysteries, they have an awakened Kundalini system, and they're flowing a lot of energy. That's where their magnetism comes from. That's how they're able to tap in and channel and bring this incredible energy to the masses, like Sai Baba or John of God, people who have hands-on healing ability. They're running in a huge current of electricity, electromagnetic energy through their system. Like if you were to look at their energetic system from, you know, if I could give people these spiritual eyes that I see with, you can see someone from far away without speaking to them or knowing what they do. You can tell how much energy they're pulling in from the cosmos, like how clear is their system and how much are they able to magnetize towards them. Just because they can do that doesn't mean that there's some saint or have a clear sexual energy. Like they still have imprints. They're here incarnated. They still have desire. And not only do they have desire, they have a huge desire. Their desire is way stronger than anyone else's around them. So they're going to pull and magnetize anything and everything that matches their energetic system into their field. It's like a huge magnet. And that's how they attract all these followers. And so the more energy that they're running, the more those people get attracted.
You guys know how much sense that makes to me right now. I don't know if you followed the John of God story. I mean, I've been following it for a while. And when I just read
the article you sent over.
When the police interrogated him, a lot of paranormal activity started happening. You know, when they set him in the room, they asked him questions, and they said he had this blank stare, and the printer started printing stuff like just stuff. The refrigerator blew up. Some people got sick. Somebody got run over. And when I was talking about this, other people were like, well, there's no way that he can cause that stuff. And I'm thinking, well, if he's messing with
of course he can.
the electrical or what you're talking about, the magnetic interference or whatever that is, chi, whatever you want to call it, then yeah, he could definitely do that stuff. Because printers just don't print stuff without a command, but this one was. So it was just electrical misfire, I think.
Yeah. So we all have, you know, our soul carries memory, right? We all know about old souls versus younger souls, right? So people who are here running a lot of energy like that, like John of God or Sai Baba, their soul essence is way larger than most people's. And so they have access to cosmic energy at a level that most people can't even comprehend. So they really are the walking magicians of this realm. Like there's very few people who can embody that. And a lot of cult leaders or spiritual leaders have come into their mystical mastery of their interdimensional nature. And personally, I've come into somewhat of my own, and that's why I can see what they're doing. Now, what terrifies me, and why I'm airing all of my own sexual secrets and why I'm so committed to clearing the shame in my system is because I want to stop that cycle, because the dark entity, the parasite that I spoke about in the first few episodes of this podcast, it feeds off of that magnetism. So anyone who came here with a strong agenda, who is here to ignite and awaken the masses, that parasite hovers, follows, inserts itself, and will go to the weakest link in the network and start infecting everyone. It's just what's happening. It's an epidemic. It's everywhere. There's nowhere that it's not infiltrated. And so some, yeah.
How do you know if you're in safe company? Like, for instance, Satya, obviously you were drawn to Amalia. I feel safe around Amalia. I mean, it's kind of backwards, male, female, but it's still, you've got to be able to put your trust in somebody. It's not, I guess it's to say you can't really learn this stuff. Can you learn this stuff on your own, or do you have to,
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, here's the thing. Here's where I'm, when you said put your trust in somebody, no, I feel that, what I'm teaching is I want you to trust yourself. I want you to learn your own system and ignite your own system, that you're not going to be fooled. Because I have been around a lot of spiritual leaders, some of the big masters walking on the planet I've been, eating lunch with, hanging out with, working with, alongside of, or just meeting. And they recognize me. They know that I am meeting them on these levels of dimensional reality, and they test me. They test me constantly. Like, I don't know if you guys know who Swami Nityananda is, but he's a huge guru in India and has, over 1 million followers worldwide. He also kind of had a huge sexual story in, what was it, 2009 or 10? Somebody put a hidden camera in his room, and so he says he's a brahmachari, which for those of you who don't know what that word means, it's someone who is a virgin and completely abstains from sex in the tantric tradition. So brahmacharis are like children who were raised in the mystery school of the priesthood of Hinduism, in tantric, like Shaivism. So they follow Lord Shiva, and they are sexless, like kind of androgynous, asexual, but no, they have a lot of psychic powers. So all his cities are open. And I went to a kind of conference he had in the city I was living in India at the time, in Mysore. And there was, probably over 1,000 people there for a whole day workshop where he was giving a kind of transmission to activate the Kundalini. And he has everyone blindfold themselves. And when he gives the transmission, and he's just sitting in this big throne on the stage with the tiger skin and his loincloth and, his malas and all of that. He's kind of dressed like Shiva. And he gives this transmission, and people get fully activated. And I personally got super activated in his presence. Like, my whole Kundalini flew open, and I was shaking, and my head got thrown back. And when I go into those states of consciousness, I can see everything. I don't need my eyes open. I can see the whole room. I can see everyone around me with my eyes closed. And I saw someone photographing me. And yet when I went into the room, it said, no photographs allowed and no cameras allowed. And I was so happy I saw that, because I knew that we were going to be doing some deep spiritual work, and I didn't want to be photographed. And mind you, I'm one of like 10 white people, foreigners, in this entire room of Indians. So I knew I stood out, and I didn't want people looking at me or singling me out as the foreign girl who's having a full-blown awakening experience in his presence, right? So when someone photographed me, I pulled my blindfold off, even though I was in this state of transcendence, like my head's flicked back. My eyes are sort of rolling back in my head, and we're all blindfolded, but I just pulled the blindfold off a little bit and I put my arms up like an X in front of my face. So whoever was photographing me would not be able to see my face. And
Oh, wow.
I saw the woman like next to the photographer telling me to put the blindfold back on. And I was in such a vulnerable state because he's running the energy in the room so high. And everybody's like going into these like really cathartic, transcendent places. I mean, there was probably 10 of us in the room that were that open, and the rest of the people there just look like they're meditating. And there's probably like, 10 people that are fully blown, like I was, running electricity through their whole spine. And after we took a break, and I went up to the photographer and I said, I want to see the photo you took of me. And he said, what are you talking about? I didn't take a photo. I'm like, no, you took a photo and I want to see it. And I want you to delete it. And he was like, no. And he was completely lying to me. He said, no, madam, I didn't take a photo. And I said, you did take a photo. I saw it. I could see everything. You know, like I was thinking, how does he think that I don't know? Like I was in this altered state. He must understand how cities work and Kundalini, and he works for the guru, right? So anyway, he lied to me, and I decided, I was so angry. I was so activated that I took a piece of paper and I wrote a note to the guru, like to the Swami. And I said, hey, I just want you to know that you have someone in here photographing, and yet the signs say no photos and videos. And if I see my face on any of your advertisements, I'm going to be very upset. I need you to understand that that is very sacred energy to me, and I don't want my face promoting your workshops. And please don't let that happen, right? And I sent, there was some guy on the stage and I asked to send it. Well, anyway, we come back from the break and Swami walks out on stage and he has my note in his hand. And he said, who's Amalia? Yeah, he's like, who's Amalia? And I was like, wait, what? Like, I just thought someone was going to let him know and he was going to take care of it backstage, you know? And he makes me stand up in front of 1,000 something more people. I don't know how many people are there, but at least 1,000. And he's like, hey, this isn't America. You know, we don't have, what did he say? Like model release forms or something. And no one was photographing. He said, no one was photographing you. So he made me look like a liar. And I, without speaking, looked at him and I sent him a full transmission. Like, don't you dare call me a liar in front of all these people. I know exactly what I saw. I know exactly what happened. I could see and feel everything. And I also wrote in the note exactly what I experienced and how I felt his energy. So I let him know that I know what he's doing. You know, so it was a kind note. And I was just saying, by the way, please make sure that doesn't happen. Sort of nice to meet you. He wouldn't, he was reading my note on stage silently. Like anyone else who wrote him a note, he would read out loud, but mine, he wouldn't read it out loud. He just kept reading it. And then the whole rest of the day, for like 5 hours that we were there, he kept talking to me, singling me out during his lecture. He said, Amalia, da 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 da, Amalia, da 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 da. Like he was so irked that he was knowing that I knew exactly what was going on. Anyway, at the end of the day, I went up to get Shaktipat with him. There's this long line. Everyone stands in line to get a hug from him. And when I came up to him, he took like 15, 20 minutes with me and he invited me to the ashram. And when he hugged me, I was like, oh my God, he's like inviting me to come have sex with him. Like I could feel him meeting me on all these different levels. And then I had this full-on experience when I went home of him astrally coming into my house. And I thought, this is so strange. What is going on? He was completely testing how much I could see and how much I was aware of what he was doing. And then he was like excited. And I was like, I thought he's a brahmachari. Like I thought he's completely asexual. And ironically, at that time, I had been for 5 years. I had not had sex. So I was like, whoa, he's like extremely he's like twisting he's trying to get into my sexual core.
Hmm.
And using this sort of sex magic allure. And I was like, this is really interesting. Like, why is he doing this? And anyway, he kept asking me astrally to come to visit him, like in person. He wanted me to come, and he told me that when I met him. Anyway, I didn't go, and within like 2 weeks after meeting him, that's when the police raided his ashram, and they put him in jail.
Oh my God.
For what?
Like 3 years for having sex with someone had put secret sex tapes in his hotel room and caught him having sex with this famous movie star that was divorced. It's all over. You can look it up online. It's and he's now out of jail. He also got busted for like having all these illegal tiger skins and sandalwood and things that are completely illegal to possess in India. But I couldn't stop laughing because I knew that and I even told a bunch of his followers, I'm like, he's not a brahmachari. You guys don't know who he is. He's completely having sex. He's totally into his sexual energy. He's feeding off of it. And he's got a whole slew of women that he sleeps with. And I had been telling them that. And everyone was so angry at me. How dare you say that about our Swami? I'm like, you guys, it's obvious. He appeared to me astrally. He propositioned me. That could be me. And I was so happy that I never went because he's so powerful. He's so powerful. And now he's back at it. He's bigger than ever now. He got out of jail. I think he served like 2 or 3 years in jail. And now he's got more money and more ashrams and more followers than ever. And everybody pretends like that never happened. And I was like, well, the guy's single. What's the big deal of him doing that? Like, it's not like he's married and having an affair. Like, I don't understand why everyone's upset. And they said, no, he can't call himself a brahmachari. Like if he called himself Osho or, how Osho did it, it would have been more acceptable.
Right, because he was misrepresenting himself. He was betraying people, trying to present, as one thing. But see, this is just, this happens so much. And it's not being addressed in a real way, except for how you're saying it, so these people come in, they're running so much energy, and somewhere along the line something turns bad. And the question is, do some of them have some good intentions, or is it all just sort of a self-serving thing the whole time? But then there is certain energy that they are able to conduct, and then people feel they have an experience, they have an awakening or whatever, or, in a Christian church, they might feel the presence of Jesus or, these things. But then, what in the heck do we do with this? When there's lying happening or then people are doing things behind the scenes they're not supposed to do. And
well, I think that's for myself, because the first few times that I experienced, this misuse of power, it was very shocking. Like, oh my God, I can't believe this man of God is now doing this. Now, after living in India and seeing it like all the time with all the spiritual leaders that I worked with, I was like, everyone is normal. Everybody is a sexual being and has sexual interest. Even people, there's monks and nuns, and I don't know, I'm not going to go into that whole thing because that's a whole different topic. But for spiritual leaders to be so magnetic, we're looking at these leaders as if they should be like Jesus Christ. And we don't even know the true story of Jesus Christ, because obviously, there was Mary Magdalene and all of that. But we're expecting them to be holier than thou in their sexuality. I mean, even for me in the small community that I serve, I noticed, like in India, people were deifying me. Like they would touch my feet and I was like, why are you touching me like that? Why are you deifying me? I'm just like you. Just because I've awakened my Kundalini and I'm running a certain kind of magnetism and energy through my system, it doesn't mean that I'm this perfect being in your eyes, and people will put you on this pedestal. And part of me sharing my sexual story with all of you and doing this podcast is like, look, we all have a sexuality, right? We're all in this body, and we all have desires and cravings, and we're all wired in some sexual imprint way. And there has been a ton of abuse on our entire species in every culture, in every religion. And there's entities feeding off our sexual energy and creating these distortions. So for us to assume that there's some sort of, holier than thou, godlike way to be without any sort of sexual shame or distortion, I think it's just BS. Everybody's got it.
Right.
So I think the spiritual leaders need to start owning up to their own sexual desires, because it's just this whole patriarchy of secrets, and that is tumbling, right? That's what's being exposed glaringly right now.
Right. And I mean, what I enjoyed about, like Joe was mentioning earlier, about meditating with you or knowing you or studying with you, is that you always would put the power in my hands. And you weren't about being a guru or anything, nor have I ever looked for any type of guru. And I traveled through India when I was younger and all of that. I was never looking for any of that. I would never give that kind of power to anyone. And that's why I was able to meditate with you and stick around, because it was always, you were always putting it back to me and giving me the power, or helping me recognize it if I didn't see it for a second, of what the power that I have. And this is, look at how easy people are manipulated. The average human, look how easily we give away our power.
I'm afraid to meditate sometimes, to be honest with you. I'm afraid of where it's going to go, and so when I got, I've never meditated with you like in your presence, but I've listened to the audios, and it was the only time I could say one of the few meditations I've done where I felt like I was in control of what was going on, even though I could hear your voice,
Thank you for saying that. Yeah. And, when I do that on purpose, because I am so afraid of being like them, because when you start channeling that much electricity and energy through your system, and you start rushing that much Kundalini life force, the smallest kink will cause a distortion. And so I'm constantly asking for people to keep me in check, because in my younger years, in my 20s, I felt that it unintentionally, there was like slight manipulation in the way maybe that I was running my business. This is before I was teaching spiritual law. I was just using it. And I saw like, oh, if I just think about something, if I just desire something, it comes to me because I have magnetism. If I just have this thought, this negative thought, like bad things happen. And I had to own that. Like I couldn't wipe it aside and say that wasn't caused by me. So the level of responsibility that I'm carrying is much higher than someone who's not rushing that much energy. So if you take someone like Sai Baba or John of God, who's rushing, like, if we look at it like wattage, and I'm on like a low wattage, they're on like megawatts, right? And for them, like every thought gets manifest exponentially. Like we're magnetic electrical beings, and when we're running energy and we're being the creator, every thought counts. So there's this responsibility that comes with it, and that's why I do not want anyone to experience the level of manipulation and mind control that I had to break free from. And I broke free from it, from activating my own energetic system. And so when I'm in the presence of others, or when people allow me to work on their systems, I see it as such a huge honor that you guys and whoever else sits with me trusts me. Like I'm it's so delicate for me. I'm like, oh my God, they're trusting me with their whole system. I can't mess up. I can't have one horrible thought. Like I have to be pure, fully pure. I have to put all my intentions and motives and everything. And it's a big job, and it's a constant like cleaning and clearing. And I never said I'm perfect. I never want to pretend that I don't have it. But when I work, I adhere to a certain level of ethics and morals within myself. And I don't want anyone to just blatantly trust me. They need to check me and call me on stuff if I'm misusing it, because it's human nature to misuse it, because we are distorted by just being here on this planet. We've got distortions and parasites, and we're hooked in.
Yeah, it almost seems inevitable.
It is. And I think if everyone takes back their sovereignty, then we can just trust ourselves, and we can like be in community with each other and like treat each other as gods treat each other, not as hierarchical, God to servant.
Exactly.
So I'm not looking for a bunch of followers. I'm looking for a bunch of leaders who are self-reliant in their own system, that they don't need to feed off of me or be dependent on me. But they love having my energy to support them as I do theirs.
Right. I mean, and even just in a basic, psychological manner, even just in the study of psychology, that's what they say, about, being a therapist. And people do that too. Gosh, when I first had my master's degree, people would just hold me to they gave me an awful lot of power actually right off the bat in conversations. And I would notice that. And then, I could choose to read them if I wanted, but I usually shut it off. But people would always say, "Oh, are you analyzing me right now?" And if I was out to dinner or at a party, no, I'm not. I shut that off because I don't want to use my energy that way, for one thing. And I was lucky that I had a lot of boundaries and that I could contain a lot. What was that, Joe?
I worry about that with you, Satya. I'm like, I wonder what she thinks of me. I wonder if she thinks I have a psychological issue.
You.
Yeah.
But even, and then just from just for therapy, it's you don't want your client dependent on you. You don't want them, giving you the credit for if they learned something or if they're feeling better, or, my goodness, you just don't want that. You want them to have the credit, and you want them to ultimately not need therapy all the time or whatnot, so that's the healthier way to do it.
Well, about therapy though, and the tradition I studied was a Western, like ceremonial tradition, right? But they told you that you need to be in therapy while you do this, right? So they would say you need to be in therapy specifically with a psychologist that kind of understands the Carl Jung type of therapy. And I didn't believe that at first until, you started seeing some of this stuff work, and you get a little bit of what's called megalomania, and you need, I guess, a therapist to keep you in check. I mean, is it a bad idea though well, let me ask you this. If anybody's going through mystery teachings, whether it's Amalia or anybody, do you think it's a good idea that they talk to a therapist while they're going through these things?
Well, I think the more support for a person, the better. I'm just saying that to be dependent on something for years, that's different. But if you want extra support, I think the more support, the better. But I don't think it's an absolute necessity. And I guess it depends on who your teacher is and what your level of development is. And I'm just still reeling just about the whole, the amount of Kundalini energy and how it just consistently, repetitively across time and dimensions and across cultures and across countries, it just keeps being misused. And it doesn't matter what religion you are. And I'm just so fascinated.
Well, it's the golden serpent, and there's a lot of serpent heads. And you know what? Let's use that for our next topic. So you guys are going to have to stay tuned to hear more about the Kundalini serpent and how it gets so distorted and twisted up, because we might have to do a series on this, because there's so much to cover. But thank you guys for listening, and please check us out on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, and our website, lovesexagenda.com. Please subscribe, share it with your friends, let us know what you think, and send us a message if this inspired you, or if you have questions or want us to talk about something very specific. We would love to know. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks for inviting me on.
It's always great when you're here.
Thanks for hanging out with us. If you'd like to contact us and stay in touch with us, you can find us at lovesexagenda.com. That's lovesexagenda.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram, Love, Sex, and the Hidden Agenda. Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi